Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you what to look for in a real corset. Not a lot of people are lucky enough to actually live close to a real corset shop, a physical one where you can actually walk in and study the corsets before you're able to buy them. But if you are one of the lucky people, then this video is for you because I'm going to go through all the different parts and tell you exactly what to look for to make sure that you're buying a real corset. Okay, so I have a selection of corsets I'm going to show you throughout this video. This one is a really good quality corset made from Totally Wasted, and this one is just kind of a cheap boosty. It's not even a real corset from Le Chateau. This is pretty much the quality that you can expect to get from, say, Fredericks of Hollywood. So for the material, the number of layers is not extremely important, but the quality of the material certainly is important. You can have a single layer corset of really strong, densely woven brooch with essentially no stretch, or you could have 5 layers of spandex, which will inevitably stretch out and or dry rot. The one-layered corset is a far better choice. So what you can do in a corset, if the fashion fabric looks really delicate, then feel the fabric between your fingers and try to pinch it and move it back and forth to separate the layers inside. Get a feeling of how many layers there may be. If the fabric looks delicate but feels thin yet stiff, it might be interfaced. If it feels thicker or heavier, then it might be fused or otherwise flatlined to a strength layer below, like coutil or twill or canvas. So twill, denim, drill, those fabrics that have the diagonal weave, that is pretty much the standard for off-the-rack corsets. But coutil and brooch, they should be used for the higher end corsets, like on the inside here you can see the herringbone coutil inside. If your corset has a care tag, then make sure that the strength fabric is 100% cotton. In the case of certain types of brooch or satin coutil, it might be a mix of cotton or polyester or cotton and viscose, but basically what you really want to look for is no spandex in here. So this one is actually 5% spandex, and you can see how it stretches. So that is no good. That you do not want that in a corset. If you're looking at a corset and you don't see the strength fabric on the outside or the inside because it has a liner or what have you, then obviously I know my Sebastian corset has coutil because I made it, but if you're looking at one in a store, you don't know what it's made out of on the inside. So ask the store owner what the corsets are made out of and who manufactured it, although take what they say with a grain of salt, because some workers can lie or simply not know what they're made out of, but more on that a little bit later. Also, when you have the corset in your hands in the store, don't be afraid to yank on it. Depending on your level of restriction, some tight lacing corsets must be designed to administer several pounds of pressure over many hours at a time and still last for years. So a couple of good yanks, for a few minutes in the change room should not really damage the corset. If you pull on it really firmly along the horizontal and you get a feel and you sort of feel that it's stretching a little bit, that's not a sign of a good corset. You can snap it vigorously a few times. If you hear any threads break, that's not a good sign. For construction, during assembly, I prefer each panel to be stitched multiple times. So in this case, you can see that this has a top stitching on it. It doesn't have to have top stitching. It could be a lock stitch, it could be a latch seam, it could be a flat felled seam, as long as you have either overlapping rows of stitching or multiple rows of stitching. If your corset has external boning channels, you might not be able to see how the panels are assembled. And the stitching doesn't exactly have to be microscopic, but when you pull on it, there should be minimal or preferably no gaping at all in between these panels. Whether the corset has a finished liner or not does not determine its quality, but if it doesn't have a liner, then you're lucky that you can study the guts of the corset. You'll see the quality of the internal bone casings, whether it has a waist tape, etc., a little bit more easily than if the corset did have a liner. In my higher quality corsets, the waist tape is made out of either grosgrain ribbon or twill tape. In an unlined corset, the waist tape is easily visible, as you can see here. But if a corset is lined, you might have to look at it closely or on an angle so that you can see the outline of the waist tape underneath the liner. When I'm constructing corsets for my clients, I always give them an in-progress shot to prove that I've inserted a waist tape. However, I know of many reputable makers who actually don't need a waist tape to make a very strong corset. The strength actually comes from the way that the rest of the corset is assembled. But generally speaking, if you have to question the quality of the corset, then inclusion of a waist tape is a security factor. Many off-the-rack corset companies will typically use single-face satin ribbon as a waist tape. This is not the strongest that they could use, but just letting you know that this is typical. And binding and modesty panels aren't really a huge factor. They don't affect how the corset fits or how strong it is. It's really a matter of aesthetic preference. Even in my really cheap bustier here, there's like a modesty panel and a modesty placket at the front. Onto front fastenings. If the corset has hooks and eyes, like this one, just standard hooks and eyes, no bones or anything, avoid this. You do not want this. What you will usually find is a standard 1/2 inch busk, although many brands do use a heavier 1 inch busk. Even with flexible busks, quality is important as some are flimsier than others. Some are more prone to having knobs pop off, although if enough tension is applied, even the best of busks can pop a pin. I like my busk to have the last 2 brackets a little bit closer together, like in this one. I also like it to be able to clasp and unclasp without too much struggling, and also to not be too bendy. The risk of a bendy busk is when you try to lace it up, the busk might bow inward at the middle, and then it'll make you kind of look like you have a pooch underneath, right there. Many respected corsetteers will still use a 1/2 inch busk, like in the case of this one, so don't dismiss that, you know, all corsets having a 1/2 inch busk as being bad quality. However, I will often prefer to have a flat steel bone on either side of the busk, like in this case there was a 1/4 inch wide, very sturdy flat steel bone, or an under busk, also known as a boned modesty placket underneath. For bones, I prefer all of my corsets to have steel bones, but you have to be careful about this because some forms of steel bones are more flexible than others. For instance, here is a 1/4 inch wide flat steel bone that is more on the sturdy side, and here is also a steel bone, flat steel bone, which is much more flimsy, much more flexible. There's also spiral bones, which are extremely flexible. And then, just to show you and throw you off, here is an example of a wider plastic bone that is actually less flexible than this steel bone. So just because a corset has extremely flimsy bones doesn't mean that it's necessarily plastic. I have walked into corset shops before and asked the employee very clearly if their corsets were fully steel boned. And after I bought one and brought it home, I discovered that it had plastic, even though the store clerk had said that it was steel. So sometimes employees will not really know the brand of their corsets, or they will blatantly lie just to get a sale. But you can test the corset in the store for yourself just by using a magnet, a rather strong one if you can manage it. You don't have to have like my pin picker upper like this one, but just a fridge magnet will do if it's strong enough. Just make sure that if you're carrying this to the store, you don't carry it in the same pocket as all your credit cards. But since steel is a ferrous material, when you put it with your magnet on the boning channel, you might be able to get a faint pull. And I don't know if you guys can see that the magnet is kind of pulling it up a little bit. So there is some attraction there. Conversely, if there is no pull at all, then chances are they're plastic bones, and that's no good in my opinion. Now, whether the bones at the sides of the corset are spiral or flat steel bones, that's a matter of preference, but in the back by the grommets, those should always be flat steel bones, and they should not bend or kink when you're trying to tighten up your corset. Now for grommets, although I have had corsets with 1-part eyelets in the past, I prefer my corsets to have 2-part eyelets or grommets, as I find it grips the fabric better. Unless they're set into a lacing bone, grommets should be sandwiched between 2 flat steel bones, as I had just mentioned. Generally, the more narrow the flange, meaning the smaller the distance between the very edge of the grommet and the shank, the more the risk is of the grommet pulling out, but not always, particularly if a lacing bone is used. But a really flimsy grommet panel, like in my sort of red shirt here with like no bones on either side and it can scrunch up when you're trying to tighten it, that's what you want to avoid. And when you're looking at the back, there might be splits on the back of the grommets, and they can be ugly, but generally they're not really harmful as long as it doesn't snag your laces. So if you do see a corset that has splits, or even without splits, even if it has like a weird burr because of the way that it was set, and you're lacing up, just make sure that the laces are gliding smoothly within the grommets. If your magnet is small enough, then you can also check it on your grommets as well. Good grommets are made out of brass and they don't have any iron, so your magnet should not be attracted to them at all. If your magnet is attracted to grommets, like in this case, it could be a dirty alloy, or the grommets could, just be plain steel, and your grommets might rust over time. So that's what you do not really want. And fit is an entire monster on its own, because if the store clerk gives you a sample to try on, that means potentially hundreds of people have tried on that exact same corset. It's been tightened onto so many different figures that it might fit yours kind of weirdly. If the store clerk gives you a brand new corset to try on that's never been seasoned before, then it's not going to wrap around your curves quite so well because it hasn't molded to your body yet. But if you want to learn more about the real obvious flaws in fit, then see my other video called Shape Your Corset Gap, and I'll link it at the end of this video. So I hope this video was helpful for those of you who do live near a corset shop, and that you are more confident about knowing what to look for in a quality corset and knowing what to ask the store clerks. For those of you who have other experiences, either working in a store that actually sells real corsets, or if you have any other experiences with specific corset shops, then leave a comment down below, because I'm sure a lot of people would want to learn from your experiences. So that is all for this video, and I'll see you in a few days. Bye!